Reluctant Preppers provides educational awareness and commentary only. Opinions expressed do not constitute personalized financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and seek qualified personal financial consultation before making investment decisions.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We gave a special prayer of thanks for this guest coming back because Rob Kirby was in a world of hurt over the last month. He's recovering, and he's back here again on air, on with us on Reluctant Preppers. Rob, thank you for joining us once again.
Pleasure to be with you, Dunnigan.
The first comment we have from a viewer, Bill W., says, "No question, but please tell Rob we thank God for answering our prayers and healing him. We're just glad you're back."
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very fortunate and lucky to be back, and I special thanks for everybody who conveyed well wishes.
Excellent. Well, and hope you continue to heal day by day. Sounds like your ability to get out and about and do things is really growing leaps and bounds. So hang in there, and we're all pulling for you.
Yeah, hopefully up and away.
And I guess that's a reminder to all of us to take a moment, no matter what you store away here on earth, make sure that you're taking time for gratitude and to take care of your health. And that's one of the things you told us in our pre-recording talk, Rob, was you got to take care of yourself, because that's number one. If you're gonna be there for your family, you gotta be there at all. So thanks for reminding us of that.
Yeah, well, everybody should really remember the. It sounds cliche-ish, but if you don't have your health, you've got nothing, and that is the biggest item of wealth anybody can possess is their health, and you do much to promote good, clean living. So 3 cheers to that.
Well, thank you. And we've got some questions that have been submitted by viewers. We'll only be able to pick a few of these, but we'd look for your insights into these because people are concerned about additional ways that they can help protect their families. Carl Johnston asks, please ask Rob to explain gold as a Tier 1 asset.
Well, I mean, gold is a Tier 1 asset. The Financial Accounting Standards Board, or it's FASB, as it's and all this stuff has to do with regulatory oversight that is mandated or dictated by the central bank of central banks, which is the Bank for International Settlements, based in Basel, Switzerland, and they are the ones who set the standards for what Tier 1 capital is for banks around the world. And they have a big accounting change, I believe it's at the end of this month, where gold is going to be once again rated as a Tier 1 asset. And I take a little bit of umbrage with the notion that it's being reclassified as a Tier 1 asset now, because the reality is every central bank in the world has been carrying gold as a. I'm gonna argue and say that they really have been carrying it on their balance sheet. Every central bank in the world has been carrying gold as a Tier 1 asset on their balance sheet basically forever. So, and maybe not technically so, but as I'll tell you, sage words have been said by a chap by the name of Chris Powell. He's the Secretary Treasurer of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, or GATA. And Chris has made the statement publicly many times over that countries' position, or central banks' positions in countries, are much more closely guarded secrets than their nuclear secrets. So anybody who doesn't think their value of gold hasn't been present, even though central banks and governments have been bad-talking gold, it seems like forever, since the gold window closed in 1971, compliments of President Nixon. The reality is they actually value it more than their nuclear secrets. So it's always had value. That's the point that really needs to be understood by everybody. While gold has been bad talked and crap talked for many, many, many years, the reality is it has supremacy and retains its value because gold doesn't owe anyone anything. I mean, bonds that governments issue, they carry the full faith and weight, or whatever, the credit of the country that issues them.
Right.
But ask the government in Venezuela what their full credit and their faith in their government really stands for. And coming to a theater near all of us soon, what is the government of the United States going to say when people realize that much, much, much more money has been created than is officially acknowledged? So anyway, gold, if you have it in your physical possession, is worth cash on the barrel anywhere in the world in local currency or in trade at fair value. So you can't say that for a bond. A bond is only as good as the person who issued it and their ability to repay. Mm-hmm. And fiat money is really only an expression of the same. So, and when people lose confidence in fiat money, it turns to confetti. Historically, gold has never gone to zero. Every fiat currency from A to Z, literally from assignats to zlotys, there is a currency from A to Z that has gone to zero. And the dollar will join that list in time, guaranteed. And what are you going to do when it does?
And there's a related question from the Prepared Mind. It's John at the Prepared Mind. Says, will the new BIS Basel gold rules cause an instantaneous change in gold valuation, or will it have an incremental effect? And is there a time frame Rob would predict?
Well, times are going to change, and are things going to happen overnight? I'm going to answer that question in a convoluted way, if I may. You know, we've had the likes of Dr. Mark Skidmore and Catherine Austin Fitts come out with rock solid evidence that tens upon tens of trillions of dollars have been created that are off book, that aren't acknowledged to exist. What has that done to the purchasing power of the almighty US dollar? I mean, when this evidence was put forward, the value of the dollar did not crater and crash into the ground and go to zero like a 737 -8. So, so the answer to the question is, I don't anticipate when this accounting rule comes into effect for a switch to be thrown and for gold necessarily to race to the sky. But I do believe it will set in motion a process by which the desirability to hold and own physical metal globally will increase. And I look at it as being more of an incremental thing. It's going to ratchet pressure up. Let's put it this way. I think it's going to become increasingly hard for America to issue government debt. I think it's going to be increasingly hard for a lot of countries to issue sovereign debt. And this is going to be a process that sort of plays itself out over time, I believe. And the desirability and the availability, the desirability of physical metal will grow, and the availability of physical metal will decrease. And we're likely to see some I'm going to say some dislocations very likely occur in the primary paper markets for metal, namely the COMEX and the LBMA. I can't help but think that these fraudulently driven price discovery mechanisms are going to be, well, in my view, they're already just known for what they are, frauds. But I think that people are going to start to exit that arena in terms of making them viable. I see the day when, instead of open interest and volumes ratcheting up as they've done, the open interest and volumes might begin to seriously recede or collapse. So I would say look for that possibly as being a harbinger that the war against physical metal is in decline or not being taken at face value by the rest of the world.
That's interesting. That ties into the next question by Steve W. Says, I've asked before, what are the signs of a downturn leading to an economic event we should look for? You just mentioned one sign is the drying up of volume on the COMEX or the LBMA. Any other signs other than the ones that we always talk about that you think people need to keep their eyes open for?
I think a really, really big one that's very American centric. I believe that what's going on currently with our favorite aircraft maker, Boeing, I believe that the ramifications and the implications surrounding and concerning Boeing's plight is going to have a huge, huge impact in terms of acting as an accelerant to the decline of the dollar and America's position in the global market of trade. And the reason I say this, in my view, for instance, we know that America has been feverishly working on trying to work out a trade deal with China. And I would suggest to anybody that wants to think about it that any proposed trade deal with China where there would be an attempt to try and balance books very likely would have had a very, very substantial component of sales of Boeing airplanes to China as the centerpiece of a deal. And the reason I say that is because when you look at the balance of trade between America and China, the biggest line item of American goods sold to China happened to be Boeing aircraft, and it outweighs other things by massive amounts. Like Boeing is to the U.S. trade picture like no other good that America produces, unless you're talking about America's sales of armaments to third world countries or tin pot dictatorships. But America doesn't sell stealth bombers to China, but they do sell Boeing aircraft to China, and that is a big constituent of what America sells to them, and a very outweighed amount of what gets sold to China. So at the end of the day, these 737 MAX 8 aircraft, there's only 350 or so of them in flying the skies right now. The airlines with the two biggest airlines flying the aircraft are apparently, what is it? Is it Southeast or Southwest? And Air Canada, strangely, are the two biggest flyers of that plane. But it's not so much the amount of planes flying, it's the order book for the plane. There's over 5,000 orders for these planes, and that's like the next 3 or 3.5 years of production for Boeing, pretty much all locked up in that one plane. And all I'm saying is a lot of airlines from all over the world, including a lot of Asian airlines, have big orders for these planes. And with the troubles that Boeing is encountering right now, I can see very likely let's just say a reduction, like orders are going to be canceled, okay? Like, let's not beat around the bush. A lot of this 5,000 order backlog for Boeing aircraft, the 737s, a lot of those are gonna get canceled, and they're going to go, and those are going to be put into Airbus. And I mean, this is coming whether you want to believe it or not. It's going to happen. Okay, how badly is that going to hurt Boeing? Is it going to mean that Boeing might not be financially a viable company at some point down the road, 6 months, a year, 18 months from now? I don't know. What happens if their order backlog is decimated? Does Boeing get nationalized? I mean, this sort of event has the capability, in my view, of possibly being the catalyst to tip America into a recession. And if America happens to get tipped into a recession, all the budgeting and all the projections for deficits going forward get thrown out the window.
Right.
Excuse me.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got, back to the gold topic, we've got H. Paul Fuchs asking, says, you hear a lot of alternative pundits talking about a, quote, gold-backed currency, but few define it. The USA had a gold-backed currency in 1900 because you could go into a nationally chartered bank and trade in your $20 Treasury note for a $20 gold piece. The Treasury had a fractional reserve, 40% of all gold notes issued. But what does a gold-backed currency mean in today's world of peak fraud?
Okay, Donegan, getting on to what a gold-backed currency might look like. I'm going to say this. We've tried the pure fiat method of money, and it's been an abject failure. And what's to come is going to be something that is backed by tangible goods or tangible assets. My best guess is that the coming non-fiat currency is very, very likely going to be based on a basket of tangibles. And the basket may very well and very likely has at its core, I'm going to say gold, silver, possibly another metal, and very likely it'll have an agri component, and very likely it'll have an energy component. So it might be a weighted basket, which would include some crude oil, might include an agricultural staple, and it could include gold, silver, and maybe even copper. Who knows? That's what I see coming. But the big thing that I do see coming is that ultimately money of the realm will be redeemable in something tangible that you can hold in your hand. Because if you can't hold it in your hand, you don't own it. And that whole concept of money, owning something that you can't redeem for something real. And I would suggest that this quality will have to be present in whatever follows this current failed monetary system we have. And you know what? And I believe the Keynesian fools that are in control of this system as we currently know it, who have cooked up and created and hidden tens of trillions of extra dollars so they can perpetrate their fraud on humanity seemingly forever. They all know it too. And they're all scared out of their minds. And they're scared out of their minds because they know they're going to get caught. And that leads me to the next major concern is these people know that basically they know they're screwed because they know the crimes that they've committed against humanity. And what scares me more than anything is that these people are now going to be very, very desperate and they're going to feel very cornered because the world's getting wise to what they've done. And is there anything more dangerous in the world than a cornered animal that knows it has nothing to lose?
So you're proposing that when public awareness grows of the fraud that's been perpetrated on humanity by the fiat system, you think that the actual common mindset will no longer accept fiat and they will demand that the public, the people will demand something real as their money and not accept fiat anymore? Because it seems like there's certainly been quite a motivation on the part of the powers that be to have this elastic ability to create debt and create money for whatever wars or whatever purpose they deem, and that they would have their hands tied to go with something that's based on something real.
And again, that's not really where I was pointing with this. My real worry is the people that are in control of the current monetary system, when they completely realize that their power is being usurped and they're not going to have any more power, might they, in an act of desperation, do what cockroaches do? because they are cockroaches. And might they play the nuclear card, thinking that they're screwed anyway, so they can play the nuclear card and take their chances, go hanging out in their bunkers. You see, because these guys are going to lose their junk. You know, all of this lucre, all of this money that's been created out of thin air, all this fraudulently created money, they're going to be deposed. They're going to lose the power. And remember, it's this money that's given them the arrogance and the wherewithal to treat us all like peons, and to treat us all with disrespect, and to trample our rights, because after all, they had the money. They had all the money. They had all the power. They had the ability to make markets dance on the head of a pin if they so chose to do it. And they were doing it. And they've been doing it for a long time. That's why we have stock markets that go up ridiculously forever and ever. That's why we have US government bonds at record low interest rates when nobody in the world is buying US government debt. Foreigners have not been buying US government debt for a number of years now. All that's happening is they're taking these fictitiously created dollars and they're monetizing their own debt, and they're memory holding it. The joke's on us. Dunnigan, the joke's on us. Ha ha. Really funny, isn't it? Okay, wait till these guys are doing perp walks, or they've got the threat of doing perp walks for having done this. You know, what are they going to do? And it's that thought that scares me. Because, like, you know, when someone's being marched off to, for capital punishment, do they really care? Do they care? What do they care about? Do they repent? Somebody who would steal $21 trillion, do you think they have an ounce of repent in them? I would suggest to you, if they had an ounce of repent in them, they wouldn't have stolen the $21 trillion to begin with. Anyway, I think these are dangerous people. And you know what? And we know they're not going to repent because they've listened. Skidmore and Catherine Fitz called them out on this. Yeah. And when they first called them out, what did the White House do? They ordered an audit for the first time of the Department of Defense. And then what came out of the audit of the Department of Defense? Well, the financial regulators colluded with the U.S. government, and they brought in a new rule, and the new rule says that in the name of national
security, right?
The U.S. government doesn't actually have to publish transparent financials. So now the U.S. government federally has been excused from accounting. Is that the action of somebody who would repent? When you catch them with their hand in the cookie jar and they pull the curtain over and they say, my hand wasn't in the cookie jar? You know, they didn't get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. They had their heads in the cookie jar. They've been eating the cookies for a long time. Okay, and when they get caught red-handed, they say, no, that wasn't me. No, I'm just gonna turn the lights out. Okay, now you can't see anything. Okay, so how can you prove it was my head in the cookie jar? This is ridiculous. This is so childish. This is grade 3-ish. Actually, it's an insult to grade 3. This is what immature fools do. And you know what? Immature fools is a great way to describe the Keynesian mindset. Because John Maynard Keynes was a fool. And he was a danger to humanity. And his disciples are equally as dangerous to humanity. And you know what? Their game of tomfoolery has finally caught up to them. And the world's wise to it, and it ain't going on for a lot longer because it's unsustainable and it doesn't work.
We have a related question. You were mentioning in there about actual other sovereign nations dumping the U.S. Bonds. AK asks, have you heard of the Chinese foreign exchange reserves? And if so, what do you think is the composition of it? Like which currencies are in play here, or how much of it is being held in debt instruments, if any? What about Russia and its foreign exchange reserves?
Well, I know Russia has pretty much liquidated most of its U.S. government bond holdings. I would suggest to you that the bulk of whatever China does own has very likely been committed to, for instance, if China reports that they have $1 trillion worth of U.S. government bonds in their reserve account, I'll bet you that 98% of that has been pledged towards ownership and infrastructure projects in countries all over the world. So if for all intent and purpose, China can walk away from their U.S. government holdings, government security holdings at any moment, and they can just say, the bonds are yours, we'll take the hard assets. Because that's what the Chinese have been doing. That's why the Chinese are investing heavily in Africa. That's why they're investing heavily in different European countries. What they're doing is they're pledging their U.S. government securities to take ownership stakes in these infrastructure projects that produce real utility, that they'll be able to use to feed the Chinese people and to bring tangible goods to the Chinese people. They're not interested in holding U.S. government debt, and of course they're buying physical metal. They don't buy futures. They don't go on COMEX and play the COMEX game. These guys are buying real metal, and they're buying real tangible goods, or access, as in infrastructure improvements all over the world, to grant them access to real tangible stuff. Anyway, they're not caught up in the paper game, And I mean, when you talk about countries and the percentages of their reserve accounts that are held in U.S. government debt, I mean, one thing I find interesting, like the debt of America that is spread around the world is it's the Treasury produces a report every month called the Tick Report, where you see the holdings of foreign governments or foreign countries around the world, and you look at the countries that have very substantial amounts of U.S. government debt, and there's some outliers, of course, in the record keeping, which only indicates to me that massive accounting tricks are being played, because I think the number three biggest holder of U.S. government debt as a country, I believe, is Ireland, and Ireland purports to have U.S. government securities greater than their GDP, which is riddle me that and give me a good answer why that would happen. And at different times we've seen offshore banking centers like the Caribbean or the Caymans showing really big numbers. But at the end of the day, I look at it this way. I look at the countries that America has problems with. Okay, because this also ties back into the debt, because it's got to do with energy and what underpins the U.S. dollar, which is the global reserve currency still. But it's tied into the energy complex, done again, in that every country in the world that America has an issue with, like it's all about energy. It's like it's either the country produces crude oil, or the country is a proposed place for a pipeline to basically bring oil from Russia to Europe or from Russia to China. I mean, is there one country in the world that America has an issue with where their number one export is asparagus? Is there one country in the world that America has an issue with that their number one export is an agricultural product? No. Every country in the world that America has a problem with, whether it's Iraq, with Saddam Hussein selling oil for euros, whether it's Iran, who sells their crude oil for whatever currency they want, whether it's Russia, who sells their oil for and compete directly with America to try and sell their oil to Western Europe and to China in other than dollars, whether it's Venezuela selling their crude oil for other than dollars, whether it was Libya who wanted to institute a gold dinar and were selling their oil for whatever currency they wanted, whether it's the Ukraine where pipelines were proposed to basically bring Russian oil to European locations. Like what's the common element? Every country in the world that America has an issue with, or the leadership of America. I don't even really want to say the real leadership, because frankly, I don't think Donald Trump really has a problem with these people. Donald Trump is a businessman, and I think Donald Trump would like to do business with all these people on a fair and equitable basis. But I mean, he's surrounded by traitors. He's surrounded by what we refer to as creatures of the swamp. Mm-hmm. And these are people that are highly invested in globalism and as we know it, the deep state. And these people are very, very committed to one world government. They're very committed to this whole concept of globalism. And this whole concept of globalism is no friend of you and I, Dunnigan. Mm-hmm. And it's our mortal enemy. And that's what I see being dislodged or being threatened currently with the current malaise that we're seeing, not only in financial markets but in international trade. You know, things are getting rockier and rockier as time moves along.
And one of the signs of things being upside down, Greg Zoltan Botos asks, can you talk about the 1-year bond inverting?
Well, I mean, a yield curve inversion is historically and classically a harbinger of an impending recession. Mm-hmm. So, you know, are we moving towards a recession, or will the missing hidden 21 trillion be marshaled up and make everything dance on the head of a pin, again? But you see, that trick only lasts so long, Dunnigan. It only lasts as long as people want to be fooled. And what I'm saying, and what I've been trying to communicate in this interview, I think the rest of the world is pretty sick and tired of this game. And I mean, this is the reason why it's this fraudulently created money that nobody in the mainstream will dare talk about, and nobody wants to really even wrap their head around the notion that such an amount of money could have been created, was created, and where it might be hidden. The reality is it was created. It does exist. It's gone through the books of the Department of Defense. And the reason it was created, Dunnigan, is because it had to be created. Because we know from the work of Chris Martenson, if you Google Chris Martenson and Crash Course, you'll be taken to a 4 or 5 part little video series that Chris did back in the 2009 timeframe. And in that expose that Chris Martenson did, he did it, like what really did it for me, he did a chart. It shows the life cycle of a fiat money with irredeemable compound interest, an irredeemable fiat currency with compound interest. And in the life cycle of any irredeemable fiat money system with compound interest, the growth rate of the money supply moves along a very, very shallow upward to the right movement until it gets to a point where it inflects and it goes vertical. We are on the vertical part of the growth curve of our fiat money regime right now. Mm-hmm. So the money supply has to continue growing vertically And what's amazing is years ago when I realized money supply had to go vertical in the financial crisis in 2008, and I actually spoke about it. I remember talking to Catherine Fitz about it when the Fed expanded their balance sheet to up to like 4.5 trillion. I said money growth now has to go vertical forever, and I don't even remember what her answer was to me, but I was absolutely defiant that had to happen. And interestingly, a few months later, Chris Martenson produced the crash course where he showed graphically the money supply in an irredeemable fiat money system. You reach an inflection point and money growth has to grow vertical. It's only been in the last year and a bit that we realized that the money supply has been growing vertical.
Yeah.
It was growing vertical in 2008 because understand that the period of time that Fitz and Skidmore's work covers is from 1999 to 2015. And over that time period, 21 extra trillion minimum was created. So the money supply has been growing vertically. We just couldn't see it. You know why? Because they were burying it and hiding it. It's sort of like if somebody takes their dog out on the beach and they let their dog crap all over the beach, and then they run out and they dig little holes and they push the crap into the little hole in the beach, and then someone comes along and says, "What a nice clean beach this is. No one would ever let their dog crap here." Well, the reality is, the monetary crap has been all over the place for a very, very, very long time. It's been going on since the late 90s. And they've been hiding it. The little holes they hide it in are things called the Exchange Stabilization Fund and other dark entities. And but it's not like they can't go back and retrieve it. You see, they know where they've buried every one of those turds. And those turds happen to be money that was created out of thin air. And they go back and they can retrieve it and they can dust it off and they can use it anytime they want. This has been going on in spades around us, right under our noses. But you know what? Most of us are completely ignorant to the fact because we come out and see a clean beach. Okay? Well, enjoy the clean beach. Just be careful where you dig.
Where you put your blanket. Rob, we're out of time for this visit, but we've been very grateful for you returning with us. We've been speaking with Rob Kirby, the founder of KirbyAnalytics.com. Rob, if there's any last message you have for our viewers or a tip on where they can find more of your work, this would be a great time.
Well, you can catch me on the web at KirbyAnalytics.com. And, I'm a proponent of people owning physical metal. And I hope nobody takes my words as meaning go take your last dollar or take your grocery money and buy physical metal. But I mean, be prepared. Listen to Dunnigan. Take advice from Dunnigan. He tries to keep people on the straight and narrow. Have some storable food if you can, or to the extent that you can. And if you have investable assets, try to own some real stuff. And for me, number one on the list in real stuff, in a monetary nature, is physical gold and silver. And and from there, enjoy the beach because it'll be beach weather very soon.
Thanks, Rob, for joining us, as always, here on Reluctant Preppers.
My pleasure.
They say the stock market crashed today.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sounds like people's retirement accounts and savings accounts are going to get bailed into the banks.
Yeah.
Looks like pension plans and Social Security are going to get suspended too.
I know.
Sure, I'm glad we decided to put our money into gold and silver instead.
Me too.
Get your first ounce of silver at spot price and free shipping on any order over $99 at sdbullion.com/RP. Hey, Reluctant Preppers. If you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.